relatively peacefully, becoming client kingdoms that enjoyed a degree of autonomy under Roman oversight. Others, fiercely protective of their independence and way of life, resisted the invaders with varying degrees of success. It was within this volatile environment, amidst the clash of cultures and the struggle for power, that Boudica emerged, a queen of the Iceni tribe, destined to become a formidable adversary to the Roman Empire. The land and the people, pre-Roman Britain and the Iceni. To comprehend Boudica's defiance, watch this story in full. Subscribe, comment and like my channel, Green Mythology, for mythology and history. Gateway 2, the captivating worlds of ancient myth. Now watch the story in full please. The Celtic queen who challenged Rome, a figure etched in the annals of history as a symbol of fierce resistance against imperial might, is Boudica. Her story, though fragmented and viewed primarily through the lens of her Roman adversaries, resonates across centuries, embodying the spirit of a people who refused to be subjugated. To truly understand the magnitude of her challenge and the enduring legacy she left behind, we must delve into the world she inhabited, the forces that shaped her destiny, and the dramatic events that propelled her into the heart of a rebellion that shook the foundations of Roman Britain. Introduction. The shadow of the eagle falls on Britannia. The 1st century AD witnessed the burgeoning might of the Roman Empire, its legions marching across continents, bringing with them not only military dominance but also a distinct culture, legal system, and administrative structure. Britannia, the island shrouded in mist and mystery to the Romans, became a target of this expansionist ambition. Julius Caesar's exploratory expeditions in the previous century had offered a glimpse of the island's riches and its fragmented tribal landscape, but it was under Emperor Claudius in 43 AD that a full-scale invasion was launched, marking the beginning of Roman rule that would last for nearly 4 centuries. The initial years of Roman occupation were characterized by a complex interplay of diplomacy, coercion, and outright conquest. Some British tribes, recognizing the power of Rome or seeking strategic alliances, submitted relatively peacefully, becoming client kingdoms that enjoyed a degree of autonomy under Roman oversight. Others, fiercely protective of their independence and way of life, resisted the invaders with varying degrees of success. It was within this volatile environment, amidst the clash of cultures and the struggle for power, that Boudica emerged, a queen of the Iceni tribe, destined to become a formidable adversary to the Roman Empire. The land and the people, pre-Roman Britain and the Iceni. To comprehend Boudica's defiance, we must first understand the world she represented. Pre-Roman Britain was not a unified nation but a mosaic of independent Celtic tribes, each with its own territory, customs, laws, and leadership structures. These tribes, though sharing a common linguistic and cultural heritage, often engaged in internecine conflicts, a factor that the Romans skillfully exploited to their advantage. The Iceni tribe, Boudica's people, inhabited the fertile lands of what is now Norfolk and parts of Suffolk in eastern England. They were a prosperous agricultural society, known for their craftsmanship, particularly in metalwork and pottery. Like other Celtic tribes, the Iceni had a complex social hierarchy, with a warrior aristocracy, skilled artisans, and a class of free farmers. Their spiritual beliefs were deeply rooted in the natural world, with sacred groves, revered animals, and a pantheon of gods and goddesses. Druids, the priestly class, played a significant role in their society, acting as religious leaders, legal experts, and keepers of oral traditions. Celtic society in Britain, unlike the patriarchal structure prevalent in Rome, afforded women a degree of social and political influence. While men typically held positions of leadership in warfare and tribal governance, women could own property, initiate divorce, and even hold positions of power, particularly in religious roles. The figure of a warrior queen was not entirely alien to the Celtic world, and Boudica's emergence as a leader, though exceptional, was not without precedent. The arrival of the eagle, Roman incursions and occupation. The Roman invasion of Britain under Claudius was a meticulously planned military operation. Well-trained legions, supported by auxiliary troops, systematically advanced across the island, establishing fortified camps and gradually extending Roman control. The initial focus was on securing the southeastern parts of Britain, but Roman ambition soon extended further inland and towards the west. The impact of Roman occupation on the native British population was profound and multifaceted. On one hand, the Romans brought with them advancements in infrastructure, such as roads, aqueducts, and public buildings, which could benefit certain segments of society. They also introduced new agricultural techniques and fostered trade, leading to economic growth in some areas. However, Roman rule also came with significant drawbacks, including the imposition of taxes, the confiscation of land for Roman settlers and veterans, and the often brutal suppression of any resistance. The relationship between the Romans and the Iceni, initially, was one of cautious cooperation. Prasutagus, the king of the Iceni and Boudica's husband, had chosen a path of alliance with Rome. He likely recognized the overwhelming military power of the invaders and sought to preserve his tribe's autonomy and prosperity by aligning himself with the new rulers. As a client king, Prasutagus was expected to maintain order within his territory, pay tribute to Rome, and provide military assistance when required. In return, the Romans generally respected his authority and left the Iceni to govern themselves according to their own customs. The rise of Prasutagus, a queen in the making. Boudica's life before the Great Rebellion remains shrouded in mystery, with historical accounts offering little detail about her early years. We know she was the wife of Prasutagus, the king of the Iceni, and that they had 2 daughters. Her very name, Boudica, which likely meant victory, or victorious, hints at a strong and perhaps even noble lineage. As the queen of a significant tribe, Boudica would have held a position of considerable status and influence within Iceni society. She would have been involved in the social and political life of her people, participating in important ceremonies and likely advising her husband on matters of governance. The reign of Prasutagus as a client king was a delicate balancing act. He had to navigate the complex relationship with Rome, ensuring the continued favor of the imperial power while also maintaining the loyalty and support of his own people. The Iceni, like other British tribes, were fiercely independent, and any perceived subservience to Rome could breed resentment and unrest. Prasutagus likely employed a strategy of cautious cooperation, seeking to benefit from the stability and trade that Roman rule could offer while resisting any encroachment on Iceni sovereignty. During this period, Boudica would have witnessed firsthand the growing Roman presence in Britain and the subtle but persistent erosion of native autonomy. She would have observed the construction of Roman forts and settlements, the influx of Roman officials and merchants, and the increasing demands for tribute and resources. These experiences likely shaped her perception of Roman rule and laid the groundwork for her later defiance. Seeds of discontent. The cracks in the alliance. Despite the initial cooperation, tensions between the Romans and the Iceni, as with other British tribes, were simmering beneath the surface. The inherent power imbalance between the mighty Roman Empire and the relatively smaller and less organized British tribes was a constant source of friction. Roman officials, often driven by greed and a sense of superiority, frequently overstepped their authority, disregarding local customs and exploiting the native population for personal gain. One of the major sources of resentment was the issue of taxation. The Romans imposed various taxes on the British tribes, including a land tax and a poll tax. These taxes were often perceived as excessive and unfair, particularly by tribes that had initially submitted peacefully. The burden of taxation fell heavily on the ordinary people, leading to economic hardship and fueling anti-Roman sentiment. Another significant grievance was the confiscation of land. As Roman influence grew, land was often seized from the native British population and allocated to Roman veterans or wealthy settlers. This displacement of people and the loss of ancestral lands caused deep anger and resentment, further exacerbating tensions between the Romans and the local tribes. Roman law and administration also clashed with traditional Celtic customs. The Romans sought to impose their own legal system and administrative structures on Britain, often disregarding or undermining existing tribal laws and governance. This cultural clash created friction and resentment, as the British people felt their way of life being eroded by the foreign invaders. The will and the violation, the spark of rebellion. The event that finally ignited the smoldering resentment into open rebellion was the death of Prasutagus and the subsequent actions of the Roman authorities. Prasutagus, in an attempt to preserve his kingdom and protect his family, had made the fateful decision to name the Roman Emperor Nero as co-heir along with his 2 daughters in his will. This was a common practice among client kings, intended to ensure the continued favor and protection of Rome for their successors. However, the Roman officials in Britain, blinded by greed and a sense of entitlement, completely disregarded Prasutagus' will. They saw his kingdom not as an independent entity to be respected but as a territory ripe for annexation. Upon Prasutagus' death, Roman procurator Catus Decianus seized his entire kingdom, disregarding the rights of Boudica and her daughters. This act of blatant disregard for Iceni law and the wishes of the deceased king was compounded by unspeakable brutality. Boudica protested vehemently against the Roman actions, asserting her rights and the rights of her daughters. In response, the Roman soldiers subjected her to a public flogging and raped her 2 daughters. This horrific act of violence against their queen and princesses was a profound insult and an unbearable humiliation for the Iceni people. It was a violation of the most sacred bonds of their society and a clear demonstration of the Romans' utter contempt for their laws and customs. The news of this outrage spread rapidly throughout Iceni territory and beyond, igniting a firestorm of anger and a burning desire for revenge. The humiliation and suffering inflicted upon Boudica and her daughters became a rallying cry for the Iceni and other neighboring tribes who had also endured Roman oppression. The seeds of discontent had finally blossomed into open rebellion, and Boudica, the wronged queen, emerged as its natural leader. The gathering storm, uniting the tribes. Boudica, fueled by righteous anger and a fierce determination to avenge the wrongs committed against her and her people, rallied the Iceni to arms. Her powerful oratory, recounting the Roman treachery and the suffering inflicted upon them, resonated deeply with her people. She spoke not only of personal vengeance but also of the need to reclaim their freedom and drive the Roman invaders from their land. The Iceni were not alone in their resentment of Roman rule. The neighboring Trinovants tribe, who had suffered greatly under Roman colonization, also readily joined the rebellion. They had been subjected to the confiscation of their lands, the establishment of a Roman veteran colony at Camulodunum, Colchester, and various forms of exploitation by Roman officials and settlers. Other tribes in the region, witnessing the Iceni's defiance and sharing similar grievances, also threw their support behind Boudica. The rebellion quickly gained momentum, transforming from a localized uprising into a widespread revolt against Roman authority in Britain. Boudica emerged as the charismatic and unifying figurehead of this coalition of tribes. Her regal bearing, her eloquent speeches, and the sheer force of her personality inspired her followers and galvanized them into action. She embodied the spirit of resistance and became a symbol of hope for those who yearned for freedom from Roman oppression. The fury unleashed. The sack of Camulodunum. The first target of the rebel forces was Camulodunum, the first Roman colony established in Britain and a symbol of Roman power and authority. The city was poorly defended, as many of the Roman soldiers had been deployed elsewhere. The inhabitants, primarily retired Roman soldiers and their families, were ill-prepared for a major attack. Boudica's forces, a massive army numbering in the tens of thousands, descended upon Camulodunum with overwhelming force. They breached the city walls and unleashed their fury upon the unsuspecting inhabitants. The Roman veterans, accustomed to wielding power, were now at the mercy of the enraged Britons. The city was systematically sacked and burned, with Roman sources reporting horrific atrocities committed by the rebels. Temples dedicated to the Roman emperors were desecrated, and Roman officials and settlers were massacred. The destruction of Camulodunum sent shockwaves throughout Roman Britain and beyond. It was a clear demonstration of the strength and determination of the rebel forces and a stark warning to the Romans that their control over the province was far from secure. The success of the initial attack emboldened the rebels and attracted even more tribes to their cause. The March of Vengeance. The fall of Londinium. Following the destruction of Camulodunum, Boudica led her forces towards Londinium, London, a burgeoning Roman trading center and an important strategic location. Londinium was not a heavily fortified military settlement, but its growing economic importance made it a significant target for the rebels. As news of the advancing rebel army reached Londinium, the Roman governor of Britain, Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, was away leading a campaign in Wales. Upon hearing of the uprising, he rushed back towards the southeast with a small contingent of troops. Realizing that he could not adequately defend Londinium against the overwhelming rebel forces, Suetonius Paulinus made the difficult decision to abandon the city. He ordered the Roman inhabitants to evacuate, hoping to save as many lives as possible and to regroup his forces for a later counterattack. Boudica's army entered Londinium and, like Camulodunum, subjected it to a brutal sack and burning. The Roman inhabitants who had not managed to escape were massacred, and the city's infrastructure and buildings were destroyed. The fall of Londinium was a major blow to Roman prestige and a significant economic loss. It demonstrated the rebels' ability to strike at the heart of Roman power in Britain. The shadow of Verulamium. Another Roman stronghold falls. After the destruction of Londinium, Boudica's forces continued their campaign of vengeance, turning their attention to Verulamium, St. Albans, another important Roman settlement in the region. Verulamium, like Camulodunum and Londinium, was a thriving center of Roman administration and commerce. The fate of Verulamium mirrored that of the other two cities. The rebel army descended upon it with fury, overwhelming any local defenses. The Roman inhabitants were massacred, and the city was looted and burned to the ground. The destruction of Verulamium further solidified Boudica's image as a relentless and unstoppable force, striking fear into the hearts of the remaining Roman population in Britain. The success of Boudica's rebellion in these early stages was remarkable. Within a short period, she had managed to unite several disparate tribes, inflict devastating defeats on the Romans, and destroy three of their most important settlements in Britain. Her leadership and the ferocity of her followers had brought the Roman presence in the province to the brink of collapse. The Roman response. The arrival of Suetonius Paulinus. The news of the devastating rebellion reached Rome, causing considerable alarm. Emperor Nero recognized the severity of the situation and the threat it posed to Roman control over Britain. He dispatched reinforcements and instructed Governor Suetonius Paulinus to quell the uprising with all possible speed. Suetonius Paulinus was a seasoned military commander known for his discipline and ruthlessness. He had been engaged in a difficult campaign in Wales when the rebellion broke out, and he had to make a swift and strategic retreat to deal with the more immediate threat in the southeast. He gathered together the available Roman legions and auxiliary troops, including the 14 Gemina and XX Valeria Victrix legions, as well as some auxiliaries. Although his forces were outnumbered by the massive rebel army, they were better trained, better equipped, and far more disciplined. Suetonius Paulinus understood the gravity of the situation and the need to crush the rebellion decisively. He chose his battlefield carefully, selecting a location that would negate the rebels' numerical advantage and allow his legions to utilize their superior tactics and weaponry effectively. Clash of Titans. The final battle. The exact location of the final battle between Boudica's forces and the Roman army is not definitively known, but it is believed to have taken place somewhere in the Midlands of England, possibly near Manchester in Warwickshire. The Roman sources, primarily Tacitus and Cassius Dio, provide accounts of the battle, though these accounts are undoubtedly colored by Roman perspectives. According to these sources, Boudica led a massive army, estimated to be well over 100,000 warriors, including men, women, and even children. They were driven by a desire for revenge and a fierce determination to defend their freedom. Boudica herself is described as riding in a chariot, addressing her troops with fiery speeches, urging them to fight bravely for their land and their way of life. Suetonius Paulinus, on the other hand, commanded a much smaller force, likely numbering around 10,000 to 15,000 Roman legionaries and auxiliaries. However, these were highly trained professional soldiers, renowned for the discipline and fighting prowess. Paulinus positioned his troops strategically, likely in a narrow defile or a terrain that would prevent the rebels from outflanking them and would allow the Romans to utilize their superior formations and weaponry. The battle was fierce and bloody. The sheer number of the rebel forces initially posed a significant threat to the Romans. However, the Roman soldiers, fighting in tight formations and utilizing their superior armor and short swords, were able to withstand the initial onslaught. The narrow terrain likely prevented the rebels from fully exploiting their numerical advantage, and their lack of sophisticated military tactics played to the Romans' strengths. Boudica reportedly led her troops bravely, fighting alongside them in the thick of the battle. However, the superior training and discipline of the Roman legions eventually prevailed. The rebels, despite their courage and determination, were no match for the well-organized and heavily armed Roman soldiers. The battle ended in a decisive Roman victory. The Roman sources claim that tens of thousands of Britons were killed, while Roman losses were relatively light. The defeat was a devastating blow to the rebellion, effectively bringing it to an end. The aftermath and Boudica's fate. Following the battle, the Romans launched a brutal campaign of retribution against the tribes that had participated in the rebellion. Villages were burned, and many Britons were killed or enslaved. The Roman authorities sought to make an example of the rebels and to firmly reassert their control over the province. The fate of Boudica herself remains uncertain. Roman historian Tacitus states that she poisoned herself to avoid capture by the Romans. Cassius Dio, writing much later, suggests that she fell ill and died. Regardless of the exact circumstances, Boudica did not survive the defeat of her rebellion. Her death marked the end of a significant chapter in the history of Roman Britain. While the rebellion ultimately failed to drive the Romans out, it had a profound impact on the province. The Romans were forced to re-evaluate their policies and adopt a more conciliatory approach towards the native British population in some areas. They also strengthened their military presence in Britain to prevent future uprisings. A Queen's legacy. Boudica in history and legend. Despite the ultimate failure of her rebellion, Boudica has endured as a powerful symbol of resistance against oppression and a figure of immense historical and cultural significance. For the British, she represents a brave and defiant queen who dared to challenge the might of the Roman Empire in defense of her people's freedom and way of life. In Roman history, Boudica is portrayed as a fierce and formidable adversary, a testament to the challenges the Romans faced in conquering and controlling Britain. Her rebellion is seen as a major crisis that threatened Roman authority and required a significant military response. Over the centuries, Boudica's story has been retold and reinterpreted in literature, art, and popular culture. She has become a national icon in Britain, embodying the spirit of independence and courage. Her image as a warrior queen, often depicted driving a chariot into battle with flowing red hair, has captured the imagination of generations. In the Victorian era, Boudica was particularly celebrated as a symbol of British strength and resistance against foreign invaders. Statues were erected in her honor, and her story became a popular subject in literature and art. Even today, Boudica remains a relevant figure, her story serving as a reminder of the importance of standing up against injustice and oppression. Her defiance of the Roman Empire continues to inspire people around the world who are fighting for their freedom and self-determination. Conclusion. A timeless tale of defiance. Boudica, the Celtic queen who challenged Rome, stands as a testament to the enduring human spirit of resistance. Her rebellion, though ultimately unsuccessful in its immediate goals, left an indelible mark on history. She dared to defy the most powerful empire of her time, leading her people in a desperate fight for their freedom and dignity. Her story, though viewed through the often biased lens of Roman historians, resonates across the ages, reminding us of the courage and determination of those who refuse to be subjugated. Boudica's legacy as a warrior queen and a symbol of resistance continues to inspire and captivate, ensuring that her name will forever be remembered as a powerful voice against tyranny and a champion of her people. While the requested